You're watching Liquid Lunch on Biz TV. I'm Frank Morano. We're joined now by a gentleman that's an expert on many things beyond higher education. He knows a thing or two about politics, public policy, and the financial markets. And what better place to have him than on Money Monday? Fernando Uribe, let me begin with a subject that we sort of teed up in our political rundown segment where we heard different perspectives from a Democrat and a Republican, and that's the General Flynn situation. Now, from a legal perspective, Judge Sullivan is not yet ready to dismiss these charges. He's having another judge, Judge Gleason, a retired judge, come in and oppose what the DOJ wants to do in terms of in terms of dropping these charges. There's also been some talk of charging General Flynn with perjury or contempt of court because he pled guilty to something that wasn't true. We're also continuing to try and figure out what happened with this unmasking. And we now know that about 23 Obama administration officials, including Joe Biden, signed off on the unmasking of General Flynn. Give me your take on this politically, legally, governmentally. How do you think this all plays out?
Well, first of all, thanks again, everyone, for having me on again on Money Monday. In regards to the political ramifications, I mean, the seeds started being planted, Frank, back in 2013 when Barack Obama, the 44th president, was seeing Robert Mueller on his way out as FBI director. He was replaced by James Comey. And you'd start seeing sort of a systemic methodology for the rest of Obama's second term as it pertained to James Comey as director of the FBI. And we're seeing more and more declassified documents materializing about the summer of 2016 with General Flynn obviously on their radar. And what we've seen systemically from the moment then President-elect Donald Trump was attempting to transition the new government in, we saw that Barack Obama and others in his administration were looking to continue, an investigation, but not let the new administration in on it. And I think that's where we're seeing a lot of the outrage. And frankly, part of the reason that Donald Trump in 2016 took on such popularity, not here in the Northeast, but South, Midwest, and everywhere in the country, he ran out a populist message about, I'm not a Washington insider. I'm not part of the establishment. I'm not part of this sort of, fraternity of individuals in Washington that are looking to get people. And what we're seeing now is that Barack Obama and his administration, that was their goal. Their goal was to make President-elect Donald Trump's transition to the White House as painful, as uncomfortable as possible. Now, legally, I can't really speak on it because I don't have a law degree, but at least we both read a lot of information in the last 7 days about what's happened with General Flynn, the unmasking of General Flynn, also the list of individuals in the Obama administration, gentlemen, that I think have to be held accountable. And I think from a societal perspective, it reminds us about the lack of confidence that we continue to have in institutions like the FBI, right? We look at it as the nation's top law enforcement agency, but what it's doing is it seems to be engaging witch hunts, at the pleasure of the president. And it's very clear that James Comey, as director of the FBI, was doing that at the behest of Barack Obama well into the new administration. And I think they were trying to undercut Donald Trump at every turn.
Well, what was interesting about the Flynn situation, and I want to talk retail and malls in just a second, but what was interesting about the Flynn situation, John and Fernando, is that Comey apparently was willing to do this, and McCabe was willing to go forward to do this without any direction or even any coordination with the acting attorney general at the time, Sally Yates. So it was not as if you had the Justice Department saying to the FBI, yeah, this is a real problem. We want you to investigate. It looks like this is something that the leadership of the FBI, in the persons of McCabe and Comey, was doing purely on their own. You really wonder what the real reason for this investigation was and what the real impetus for it was.
Yeah, Frankie, I heard former independent prosecutor Ken Starr on this morning, and he was talking about how some have said, in the Horowitz report that there were things not done properly, cutting corners, fudging. He said it was his view that things were outright done intentionally. And, we have to see some people be brought to justice in some way. I don't know how Fernando feels about it, but how can people feel any faith in their justice system if the top ranks can break every law and nothing happens?
Well, it's a staunch reminder about the deep state, and that's not some sort of fabricated right-wing conspiracy. We're seeing it materialize before our very eyes. on a daily basis, we're seeing more and more declassified documents. We've seen legal representatives for Michael Flynn take it, to the airwaves and talk about their client. And again, this is something from a political perspective going back to this. This is a matter that's going to haunt Joe Biden going into the summer and the fall as this campaign proceeds. Because as we get back to some sense of normalcy and election season is back on our minds, at some point the president's going to look at Joe Biden and say, wait a minute, what did you know? When did you know it? And how invested were you with Barack Obama and everyone else in the previous administration with this chicanery? And again, it reminds us about how we lose faith in government, but more importantly, how we lose faith in what we think are nonpartisan, objective institutions like the FBI.
Yeah, but I do want to point out, though, not that it's any defense of the FBI's conduct here, that this was not conduct that began and ended with Barack Obama.
Sure.
The people that they chose to be in charge of the FBI, Robert Mueller and James Comey, are people that also worked in the Bush administration in very high-ranking officials. In Mueller's case, in the same position. Fernando, let me ask you about retail in general and malls specifically. We're seeing reports that as of last week, the biggest U.S. mall owner plans to have 50% of its centers reopened. We're also seeing more and more states reopening, but at the same time, we're seeing big retailers like JCPenney go out of business completely. What do you see as the future of bricks and mortar retail? How much do these businesses need to reinvent themselves? And when are these businesses going to do more what this other mall operator just did here and say, we're reopening?
Well, part of the problem with retail for some time, gentlemen, and we both know, has been the impact of Amazon. We know that their sales and profits have gone through the roof. We've seen Jeff Bezos and his company really benefit during this pandemic because people have been ordering from home. But it even goes beyond that. If you look at retail sales in 2018 and 2019, respectively, Amazon was dominating the marketplace. Less and less people were going to malls. And when we look at the Simon Group, which again is the ownership of almost 50% of malls in the country. I know here in New Jersey, by me in Jersey City, for example, Newport Center Mall is a client of Simon Group. I know others throughout the state and even throughout the country. These malls have been suffering. And with restrictions being loosened, I'm hopeful that a lot of these people can go back to work because, guys, again, a lot of people like us, hardworking Americans, we don't want to rely on a government check. We know that a lot of people are still struggling to receive their checks. People want to earn. It's as simple as that.
Nobody wants that.
Exactly.
Well, speaking for myself, I wouldn't mind relying on a government check, but nobody's offering me one.
Yeah. Look, hey, Fernando, to your point, I've been talking for the last 2 or 3 weeks now about some of my market calls, and the two main ones right now are to be short companies that are publicly traded in the commercial real estate and mall property management. And Simon Property Group, I look at that stock, it's like $50, and I think it should be worth like 20. A friend of mine who has a shop in the Paramus Mall told me he went there to check on his store, and he said about 20% of the stores in the mall were already boarded up, like closed for good. So that's, you got 20% inventory already, and then people got to decide if it's worth it to come back with lower occupancy, lower capacity. I think the mall owners could be one of the most toxic areas right now.
No, absolutely. And I think we're not just only looking at the rents in the malls themselves, but the variety of stores that we're so used to enjoying. As you mentioned, Garden State Plaza in Paramus. We're looking at Newport Center Mall here in Jersey City by me. Malls everywhere, quite frankly, are going to take a serious hit because of this pandemic. And again, as I mentioned before, Amazon is going to continue to thrive. People will continue with their online shopping. We've seen drastic sales plummeting in the last 2 years. And I don't think anything's going to change for 2020. And sadly, a lot of these chain stores, as Frank mentioned, JCPenney, which we've all grown up with, right? I mean, we've all gone to JCPenney at some point in our lives, Sears, right? JCPenney and other big retailers, they're going by the way of extinction. And it's really tragic and sad, but that's the marketplace right now. And especially with online ordering, like I mentioned, Amazon and other companies, we're going to see retailers continue to decline.
I think we all probably had some tough skins at one point. I think that came out of JCPenney.
Sure. I think you're right. Fernando, it is always a pleasure talking with you. And again, our condolences on the loss of your grandmother. I know she lived every minute of those 101 years.
Guys, I just want to say on behalf of my family, I want to thank Liquid Lunch for their support and encouragement. And, for 101 years, we were very blessed to have her. She showed us kindness and warmth and compassion and humanity. And we just want to do everything in our power to keep her memory.
God bless you. God bless your family. We're not going anywhere, folks.
God bless you, Fernando.
We'll continue right here on Liquid Lunch on Biz TV. I'm Frank Moreno here with John Tobacco. Coming up next, we'll break down the latest in terms of the presidential election and the economy.